you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Hey guys, this is the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm hosting. My name's Christian Dale, and I just want to talk about deadlines. What they mean. RIP. RIP to the deadlines. RIP to every single time we've talked about getting them done. We've said one day they'll get done, and they never do. They're always around us. They're always there in the back of our minds, and we don't really get any peace until they get done. There's no peace. And forget about this notion that we're going to stop thinking about objectives as deadlines, because they're here to stay. Deadlines are a part of us. Deadlines are here to stay. So hopefully, a different outlook might influence your performance, or at least your relationship with deadlines. Remember, I like to think about it like relationships. Even kind of abstract ideas like deadlines. I like to break them apart, talk about them interpersonally and how they relate to each of us, because they do relate to each of us. It's relevant to all of us in a very particular way. Not everyone has trouble with deadlines. I am not one of those people. I wouldn't say I have major problems, but deadlines just make you a little bit, they make you uneasy. I could easily admit that. They make you uneasy. You just want to chill, watch the game, maybe enjoy some anime. I'm into that. Maybe play a game. I don't know. There's so many better things that you can do than meeting a deadline. But why is there such an aversion to it? Why am I so willing to go out on a limb, do so many other things, which might take a lot more time than the deadline itself, mind you? I'm going to say that again because you guys might have missed it. We're more willing to spend time on something other than the deadline, or at least I am, rather than actually doing the deadline, which probably, completing it, getting it done and over with, which probably takes way less time. I'd say, on average, probably, less than 30, definitely less than 33% of your actual time. But a deadline is, just because it's time, like you may spend 2-3 days procrastinating, avoiding deadlines. But the deadline, the task that it actually requires you to complete, only is going to take 3, 4, maybe 5 hours. People kind of put it off for a while, especially the weekends. I remember when I used to put off deadlines, which came in the form of homework, when you used to go to school. I only remember a single time where I started my homework on a Friday. So that weekend I didn't have to do any work. That's crazy to me. So that's why that kind of was getting my interest. And I was like, yo, we needed to check this out. You have the whole weekend if you just do your work now. But no, most people, I'd say a lot of people, maybe not most, a good amount, I'm not even sure, will choose to wait. Wait till Sunday, right? If Monday's a holiday, they wait till Monday to actually get those deadlines done. And I think for me, it's natural. But is there anything to it? Is there anything to that? Anything deeper in that? And maybe if we explore it, we'll learn it a little bit more. One day isn't a time. You don't see it on a clock anywhere. It's just, but it's familiar with us, right? It's familiar. We use it all the time. Everybody, one day is like a storage unit, and everybody has a little bit of that junk in it. Actually, scratch that. I'd say a lot. We got a lot of our just garbage of the things that's left behind, the things that we don't get done. Let me say one day I'll fix it. One day I'll get to that. I like one day. Personally. One day for me means it's a promise of ahead. One day just means like, yo, I don't have to do this right now. Because there's definitely things like that in our lives. We can't always act just because there's something that needs to be done today. We got to save that strength, that urgency for when we really need it. So people may feel like and have this misconception that you're lazy if you don't do your deadlines on time. Now, if you don't do them at all, that's very different. You should try to, but the whole point of a deadline, honestly, is completing it within the designated time. So if you don't do it in the right time, then you're going to have a problem for yourself. So either way, you're going to be seen as, it's not the most promising outcome. But it's completely different from not doing it. But we can explore that. Ideally, you want to get it done. But why are we so not feeling right about it? Have you ever been in a situation where one day was tomorrow? Where you put it off? You put it off too much. You waited to the last minute. You just realized on about the last day, the last few days leading up to the deadline that, oh, in fact, I do have a deadline. I have something that I need to get done. It's crazy. How could we forget something like that so important? Maybe we want to forget. That's what this is all about, putting deadline on the spot for once. Stop asking me. Maybe I need to ask you a little bit of questions. Why do you make just people feel like that? Why do you make me feel like that? This ain't personal, but you got to really ask yourself. You have an important deadline. You have things that you got to do. How could a person forget it? Is it because deadlines aren't important? I don't think so. You could just hear that in the name of it, deadline. That's it. That means it's over. That means when you hear deadline, it's not nice. It's not like goal. Right? Goals is a much nicer way to say things, but they kind of mean the same thing. But we don't say goals. You don't get given goals. So hopefully we could check that out too. Why we're given so many deadlines and not goals? What's the difference? What's going on there? Deadline is stress inducing, anxiety inducing, pressure. But that doesn't mean it's negative. This is not some kind of weird, malicious thing. Deadlines have helped people get things done. And not all deadlines are bad, right? Maybe there's like an ice cream deadline somewhere. I mean, I know a lot of people that be interested in that kind of deadline, meeting that. Like, hey, you got like a few hours to make sure you get ice cream. Then all of a sudden, deadlines don't seem too bad. They're chill. I feel relaxed. If you say I have a deadline, okay, we got a deadline. We're going to do it within these 24 hours. We're going to go swimming. We're going to go to the beach. We're going to go to the movies. We're going to take a trip, travel. You got a deadline. I got a week to travel and enjoy myself. That's your deadline. I mean, in a way, it could be kind of sad because it's like you're putting a limitation on fun. But that doesn't mean that you won't enjoy yourself. It's like, oh, when the deadline's over from vacation, you're going to stop. You're going to stop having fun. You're going to stop. No. You still enjoy it. You still have the lasting effects. But what is different about deadlines is that it causes a serious, I think, a visible reaction. Physiological? Probably psychological too. It's on your mind. Physiological is, right? Related to the mind and body. Don't quote me on that. That's what I've been led to believe. I have a deadline, and after the break, I'll definitely check that myself. But seriously, on the other extreme, we have the 1 day deal that we're all a part of. The storage of broken commitments, broken promises, things that we're supposed to do, get done, or haven't gotten done, or when the deadline itself passed us by already. We are part of it. It's a part of us. But it doesn't seem to exist in the same way for the good deadlines, the ones that we look forward to. The ice cream deadline, the vacation deadline. So it doesn't apply to it in the same way. No, we're looking at the deadlines. Wait. It's true that they don't apply. The good deadlines don't elicit the same reactions. But maybe they tell us something about how we should look at deadlines. How easily we're coaxed into doing the things like ice cream, vacation. Doesn't have to be that. There's pretty busy things that people enjoy. It could just be something you're interested in. And people have a tendency that they'll complete those deadlines. They'll be very excited to do them, which implies that there's a certain class of deadline that people struggle with more. But deadlines, as they say, are all about getting things done. So why would anyone have a problem with getting things done? And deadlines relate all to the tasks which you're required to complete and the amount of time which you're provided to complete the task within. You could easily turn up the pressure on any deadline just by shortening the amount of time that's available. So you want enough time, but not so much that you waste it. You get a whole month and you do it on day 27, day 29. But you don't want so little time as if you'd had to do it tomorrow. Although there's some deadlines that you're going to have to do some things tomorrow. Just this morning, I had to service cars. Right? You have to get your sticker. You got to go when they tell you to. If you don't get that sticker every year, right? They make sure things are up to date. It can become a problem for you. But not all deadlines are bad. And even that deadline was relatively easy for me to take on. And why was that? So we have the ice cream getting deadlines where we just love going to get those done. We have a limited amount of time to get something great. We have the middle deadlines. They're not as pleasant, but we can get them done fairly easy. And then there's the last kind, which actually stress you out. And when we get back, we'll be looking at the source of that stress.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
This is Christian Dale, and we're back. Coming from talking and theorizing about deadlines and what they really mean for us, what their purpose is. And I think it was going somewhere along the lines as we were talking. I was suggesting that perhaps they're given to us. And I didn't quite end it like that. But it was really where we ended was the source of stress. Deadlines as a source of stress, the specific type of deadline that we typically have a problem with. That's the one that people talk about. It's the one that people think of. They think of the stress. They think of the physiological reaction that their bodies have to it. They have it in response, like a fight or flight response to stress, to a deadline. How could something so modern be significant enough to cause us stress like that, in that manner? Stress to the point where we would be averse to it. That's where we came from in terms of deadlines and talking about the ones that have a huge impact on our lives and really dictate progress that happens in society, happens in our personal lives. Deadlines, they don't really feel anything. They're not guilty of anything. They're just tools, intangible concepts. And I think that the source of the stress comes from it comes from top-down deadline. We'll call it that. Top-down deadlines. It comes from the top down. You're often in a situation where you're told, you're instructed, you're required to meet certain goals. That could be stressful. You have, if you're not used to that level of responsibility, that expectation, it can really mess with your mood at the very least. Not your mind. It's not that quite invasive, but over time, with enough of them, and a significant enough goal, something that's important, it can lead to real life stress. We see it all the time. You could see it in students. When I was a kid, we used to have tests like every other kid. And you wanted to be prepared for that test. But it came from the top down. You had an unpleasant experience, something you had to do, a requirement you had to fulfill, and you were afraid of performing poorly. It was difficult to handle that stress at the time. But I mean, you take so many tests over and over, and then you kind of become used to the notion, but you never really get rid of the feeling. Sometimes I've woken from dreams where you have a test. And it's like what, I guess, is supposed to be a nightmare. And the nightmare is really I'm in school. I'm in school, we're having a seminar, and it's a test. It's something that I haven't done the reading for. I'm not prepared, as prepared as I would like to be. That's the kind of stress that certain deadlines can bring into your life, and that's how they can kind of invade your mood and affect your balance. So when we speak of feeling uncomfortable, we're often talking about the task that we have to complete related to the deadline. You have to complete it within a time frame, but it's often a task that's probably challenging, and for good reason. I mean, you want to grow, you want to perform well and be good at what you do, but sometimes you're not all there. You're not quite as prepared as you need to be, and that's going to lead to doubt, an obvious uncomfortable feeling with a deadline where you're not actually prepared to complete it within that time frame. You need more time than is actually available to you. And I mentioned before the reality of stress and how it's not malicious, it's not nefarious in itself. There's actually a healthy amount of stress that you can handle. There's a healthy level. We're talking about unhealthy levels, but there are healthy levels. Healthy levels help you get things done. But top-down deadlines, the ones that are often like my story of being where you're in a position where you're not prepared, that is going to cause you stress. But stress is a natural thing, so you shouldn't run away from it, but you need to learn how to handle it. And it's not as simple as saying no more deadlines or no more stress. If you care at all about anything, if you put any effort itself is stress. But we call it effort. It's a different word, but it means the same thing. It's to put in work. You ever heard someone say to you, why are you stressing that? Stop stressing it. Stop caring. Because when you stress, you care. There's no person that is caring about something and not stressing to a certain extent, not thinking about it, not working through the problem in their own mind. How do I figure this out? This bothers me, whatever it may be, and it may not be related to a deadline. But deadlines, objectives, things that we have to get done require effort, require care and willpower. And that is stress. Your body's naturally going to be able to handle that, but you can see just addition and subtraction how too much stress is going to overwhelm your body. It's going to overwhelm your mind. And it exists. It's a very real reality. But you're not, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to escape stress in life. If you care at all about anything, like I said, you're not going to be able to escape stress. I'm sure the the pyramids, skyscrapers, Mars landing in the future, the moon landing, they've had and they will have their own unique stressors. Stress of deep space. Can you imagine that? That's wild. But you have to be prepared. You have to be in a position where you're prepared to take on your whatever task it is. And you need to be honest with yourself about your limitations. The sooner you're honest, the sooner you'll be able to seek that help so that you can prevent yourself from folding, really just cracking under the pressure. That's what folding means. In case some people don't understand that. Folding is when you fold, you bend, kind of break, almost. It's just a metaphor for that. But what else do I mean about top-down deadlines? Deadlines that give you stress, a particular kind of stress that we're familiar with, those who have to complete tasks. If you've ever had to wake up in the morning and be like, oh, I got to go to work. I have to get this done. You have to move the car, the street cleaning. That in itself, that's a deadline. It could be small. It doesn't have to be on a week scale. It could be a small deadline. If you don't do it, it'll create problems for you. But as you're doing it, you're putting in effort. You're losing sleep. You're getting up early in the morning. You're doing something you could have done maybe some other time. And we'll get into that actually a little bit more in depth later. But the whole idea about getting rid of it is fiction. You just need to recognize that it typically manifests itself where someone's telling you to do something you may not be prepared for, and we've covered that part. It's the other person. Like, this person cares about this thing, so they want to tell you to do it. It could be a job as simple as that. That happens all the time. They require you to do it. They want something done. They don't do it. Top-down management. Hey, I'm going to tell you to do it. You handle it. And now you're given a deadline to handle whatever task it is, whatever project you're working on. Unfortunately, that is not the same as it being it's your deadline. It's an assigned deadline. It's a pressure that was put on you. Something you signed up for, but you don't really, does anyone really know how much stress they sign up for in life? You don't know what you've agreed to. You could have, you get a car and you really don't know how much you're going to be, how much responsibility, a car, a dog, how much you're going to take on because you have to care for it, for both, in either situation. The idea is that you divert energy and resources toward tasks which you may or may not be readily prepared or possess at the moment. And then over time, it's going to leave you worn out and deflated unless you can find a way to restore that energy, which we'll talk about much later, not right now. But that's what's happening. What does energy, being prepared, and what does that have to do with deadlines? Well, it affects your perception of the deadline. And your perception is related to your emotional disposition, what it makes you feel, what's the result that comes out of it, what's the psychological result that it imposes on your body. Because when you feel things and you think things in your mind, you feel the stress and you worry, your body's going to feel it too. And you're going to have less available good, positive energy to put in the positive places when you actually have the opportunity. I mean, have you ever been in a position where you could actually enjoy your time and you couldn't? You had the opportunity to sleep, to just lay down, to just talk to somebody, and it was just your deadline, your work. It's all on your mind. Even if you did complete it, it's almost still lingering in there. The sense of the compelling sense of responsibility. And that's what top-down deadlines do. That's what the other extreme of deadlines that I was talking about do. They put you in a position of responsibility to a level that may be unpleasant. And they raise the stakes so high that it can make it very unpleasant and unhealthy for you. And if you can just get it into the zone where the middle, towards the middle, like I spoke about earlier, there were middle kind of deadlines which is just assigning a kind of the general temperament that people feel towards it. I say the dentist. You don't feel that stress when you go to the dentist. Some people may have reason to be. But the dentist, those middle deadlines are really manageable. They're prepared. You're prepared. You have the energy for it, and they serve you. Right? It's within your ability to do. It doesn't take that much from you. And actually, on the other, I'd say it actually quite serves you when they brush your teeth. So maybe that's the secret. When we get back, we're going to talk about doing things ahead of time and how that serves you.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hey, we're back, continuing the discussion of top-down deadlines, middle deadlines, and how to improve our perceptions of deadlines. To recap, I mentioned top-down deadlines and middle deadlines, and then what I called ice cream deadlines. Basically, these deadlines existed on a scale where the ice cream, the deadlines where we found the least difficulty in being able to complete. The middle, where it was not as pleasant, such as going to the dentist or getting your car registered, things of that nature, but they served you and they still came off a lot easier compared to others. The most difficult group, which was anxiety inducing. stress-inducing. That was kind of the top-down deadlines that I spoke about, which tend to typically come from other people in positions maybe of employment, positions where there's a huge difference in power. And it's not always the case. It can also, the stress can also originate from the task itself, not being really prepared or capable or having the energy that's necessary to really complete those tasks. Because all a deadline is, and I'm speaking about deadlines as tasks, because a deadline is just an objective given a timeline. So that's why I stressed before not to put a negative, an innate negative connotation on deadlines, because deadlines are progress. They help get things done. But it all depends on your perception. And our perception, almost said inception, our perception is influenced by who's providing the deadline. Is it coming from us? Because that's going to look very different compared to us when it comes from us. If it's from us to ourselves or from someone else to us, top down, someone in power, as I said before, whether or not it's something you believe in, is it something that you buy into, right? Is it a good product? Is it something that it's easy enough when it's your company. It's easy enough when it's your company. You want to get people to buy into your idea, and you set deadlines for them. So you could understand from one's perspective, the perspective of someone who hands out deadlines, who's passionate about what they do, who has a stake in what they do, whose deadlines they give out feeds their ego, it feeds their core, it feeds their inner energy and their self, and it contributes to their positive outlook because they're doing exactly what they want to do and they believe in their work. That less can be said for the person who doesn't. People are often compelled to get into jobs and get in relationships where they're tasked to complete objectives, to meet deadlines that they may not believe in. And that's why it all goes in hand. So you can't get one without the other. That's why you struggle with deadlines. That's why it's a struggle. That's why it doesn't come as naturally as going to the dentist, doing little things. But if you're able to adjust your perception, maybe scale it back from the extreme to get it out of the stressful, anxiety-inducing zone and over to the middle where a lot of other deadlines exist, where we happily complete objectives, we meet our deadlines that serve us, and that the ones that we put on ourselves, the ones that involve self-care and routine and making sure things get done and don't involve ego. There's no strings attached. It's like you have to do it for yourself to keep going. You have to continue. Then you say, well, isn't a job similar? Well, you have to do that for yourself. You need money, so therefore you're obligated to do whatever, meet the deadline no matter what it is, whether or not you have the energy and you believe in it, no matter what situation you are, because that's feeding you. It's feeding your pockets. It's feeding you gas money. It's feeding you actually food, putting bread on the table, putting electricity in your house, water. So you have an obligation to do it, but it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't come naturally when you don't. It's not the same as it's just, I couldn't really explain why. There's something different about going to having a deadline, say for a deal towards a spa, where it's going to serve you, or a deadline you put on yourself and you actually do it even if you don't necessarily do it wholeheartedly. You're a little bit tired, you don't want to get up out of bed that day, but you go and do it. It's still, it's within your responsibility, and you're not being held to a certain standard. You're free to express yourself and feel how you want to feel. There's a certain laxness to it that being placed in a position of responsibility for a deadline is by someone else is going to add a pressure that you just don't have it when you put it on yourself. Not to say that your own deadlines that you set for yourself can't be great, but that's kind of why it's different. If you continue to do those things and change your perception, then therefore you're going to benefit. You're going to benefit from being comfortable with deadlines. That's what you want to work towards. You want to change your perception. One of those ways, oddly enough, is simply to put yourself in a position of more deadlines, more tasks. And oddly enough, it's not someone telling you to do it. You need to hold it to yourself. Make yourself, when you carry out your goals, make them deadlines. There's a reason why people set deadlines rather than goals, because deadlines actually get done. So start expressing your objectives through deadlines, your personal objectives, so that you might become familiar with the process of deadlines. When you have 10 or 15 deadlines, tasks that you need to get done that come from you, that are from you, your heart, what you believe in, you've created them, that benefits you, and someone else comes into your life and tells you, gives you a deadline, it seems like it could be overwhelming, but you're going to be capable of putting your deadlines, of freezing them, first of all. You can freeze them anytime you want. You're going to have full autonomy, full control. You're going to believe in what you're putting forth, and asking yourself what expectations you're asking yourself to meet. That's significant because it will get you accustomed to the kind of stress and exertion that you need to be capable or familiar with, so that when you go through it again, you familiarize yourself. It becomes automatic. You don't feel like you're doing more than you need to, right? It becomes, you build a certain tolerance for the amount of stress. When you have 10, 15 deadlines, tasks for yourself that you've been completing, that you've been working on, even when no one has told you to work on them. That's the big problem. When someone comes into your life, it doesn't matter the situation, especially if you don't really identify well with them. There's differences in power, there's differences in perspective, and they've told you what you need, what they need from you to do. There's a huge resistance. People are unfamiliar with that. In our normal lives, we constantly live freely. We express ourselves freely and according to our wants. That's how we normally navigate. If we want to watch something, we watch it. If we want to do something, we do it. We want to go somewhere, we go. That's it. We don't move because someone else tells us to. And then when they do tell us to, we're not really prepared. We're not mature enough. I'm not mature enough to really just say, to just go with it, to just do it because I have what I need to get done right on the other side of that. I've been doing that. That's all I'm seeing. That's all I'm focused on. So when they tell me something like that, it's not going to be significant for me. It's going to be something that it's going to be like on the bottom of my list of my priorities in terms of stress. That doesn't mean that it's not going to get done on time. It just means it's not going to occupy so much space in my mind and so many resources in terms of care, in terms of stress and anxiety. It's just not. It's just not. The other is aimed to make sure that your deadlines, your whatever it is that you make them, are sizable. They're the right size for the amount of time, attention, energy, and stress you're willing to commit to them. Ideally, you want them to be small to medium, right? Let them be of the nature of the ice cream deadlines, the ones you really want, the fried chicken deadlines, the exciting, easy deadlines that are you can complete them without a thought, without a second thought. And then the middle deadlines, which are not as fun, but still manageable. And that will build your comfort with those deadlines. And what it is, those are all geared towards you. First of all, they come from you, so you remove the possibility that might throw you off, because it's coming from you. It's coming from you, and then it's serving you. It's not serving someone else. It's not you doing something for someone else. It's you doing this for you. Inevitably, you become more patient, more able to bear the things that you don't like, because you have done the things that you're supposed to do for you. You treat yourself like your company. That's what you need to do. Treat you like the company. You're the company. This is you. And I have deadlines for myself that I complete. So this is what I can do for you. This is what's realistic for me. You start setting the times, people are going to cooperate with you based on your time. There's nothing like when you speak to a person, when are you free? When do you have free time? And they just always have free time. They have nothing to do. But when you give them the task, they're not able to complete it in time. Then things come up. Rather than them being on that constantly and knowing what it is they need to do. They're in the habit of doing the things they need to do. So they can easily tell you. They could tell you on the spot. And that's what you want to have. You want to have that kind of discipline. If you don't believe me, you can't ruin a person's day who's completed 20 things off their deadline list by a certain time. Something bad happens to them, and they lean right back on the things that they did for themselves according to what they did. People chase goals, right? Deadlines get you over the finish line. They chase you. And if you make the schedule, that's what you need to do. That's the hack. You need to learn that you're the schedule maker. And you need to make your schedule according to your life, okay? Then you're in control. When we get back, we're going to talk about the final way to change your perception, all right? Do things ahead of time. We'll be right back.
GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were just discussing perception and two methods that would help alter one's perspective on deadlines and how to approach them. One of those were the idea that you had to create more deadlines for yourself in order to become more comfortable with them. That if you yourself were making the deadlines, you were responsible, you were directly benefiting from them, then you would care more. And over time, that comfort, that familiarity would give you the confidence when dealing with those who, with what we called top-down deadlines. The anxiety, stress-inducing deadlines that are really the popular ones everyone really struggles with. They struggle with completing. They struggle with meeting them. It's not always fun, but if we acknowledge it and we look a little bit further, we're able to discover that there's a reason behind it. The other method being that you needed to develop a discipline. The discipline had to come from the self in terms of manifesting energy for the tasks, for meeting those deadlines. Because meeting deadlines requires energy, effort, attention, and is going to force you to commit a certain amount of stress on your own system, on your own mind, and your own body. So you're always committing stress. Even if it's something that you want to do, you just commit less stress towards it. And oftentimes we live in a world where we didn't take the reins for ourselves. People don't take the reins for the self and taking responsibility. So by the time someone tells you what to do, you're so poorly versed in doing what others tell you, and not finding the significance in deadlines and meeting deadlines and creating them for yourself, making them significant and making progress towards your own ends. That when it's forced on you, when you're in a position that you can't escape, a position where you're overwhelmed or you don't actually know what's going on, you're going to struggle. You're going to feel stress and anxiety. You're not going to really know what's going on, and you're going to want to escape. That often leads to the tirade of excuses that we have. I've made them, maybe you've made them, where our imaginations just wander off. So easily we're able to be distracted, and we somehow suddenly forget that the deadlines, the things that we were given responsibility to take care of, often don't get done because it's because it's just a lack of discipline, but a discipline in another way. Not in the sense that you need to sit down and do what I say. I don't think like that. It's more, you need to learn how to express yourself in this way. That deadlines aren't a negative thing. They help drive you to complete the task that you're given, and that you should recruit and use those same resources for your own end. Using them will give you the confidence and make you in the patience and comfort for you to be functional when you are required, when you do get deadlines and you are uncertain of your preparedness and whether or not you're into it or not. But it actually, on the other end, it will also make you more critical of what you're into. You're less likely to become invested in something where you have to meet a deadline and you're not interested. You have no personal stake in the result of the matter, so you're not going to do it. You're not going to work there. You're not going to participate in that experiment. It's just not going to happen. And that's best, because at the end of the day, it helps you value your own time. You have too little space in your own mind, too few resources, your own capacity to feel stress. You can only feel it so many times, and deal with things and give out so much attention and so much energy to a selective amount of projects. It just helps you be on top of what's important. That's really what it's about, deadline, and really taking back that autonomy, taking back that independence, and using it as an empowering tool rather than something that people feel is like walls closing in on them, right? Now we're going to discuss the last method of being able to tackle both tasks and deadlines. Doing it ahead of time. It seems like a simple enough idea, doing things ahead of time. We'll start with an example of when if you've ever been in a position where you didn't get something done, right? You find quickly that when it's the moments that you're not on top of things, that people end up, opportunities present themselves. Opportunities present themselves no matter what, whether you're ready or not. And doing it ahead of time is going to benefit you. It's going to remove that stress and going to preserve your health in the long run. So the example of, have you ever been in a position where you were in the middle of something, you had something to do, and a task, a deadline. I've said that so many times right now, I apologize, but you have a deadline and something very enticing comes your way. Maybe it's a person. Maybe it's an opportunity for fun. Something else. You're quickly presented with a limited opportunity to exploit something else, something that's more of interest to you, right? It might teach you a little bit more about you, but you really can't. You're not in a position to fully exploit the opportunity. Maybe somebody invites you to their place, they invite you to a party, you learn about an opportunity, and you just can't take it full advantage. Why? Because you haven't completed what you need to do. You're just now doing what you need to do, and go figure, it's on the last few days that you have before the end of the deadline. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean as in do things ahead of time. Everyone's felt that before, where you were in a poor position. You could have got something else done, taken advantage of something, and you couldn't because you didn't do things ahead of time. And so you're doing things now, and you're missing out on the now of now, rather than have done it back then when you were supposed to, and then that was in the past. But now you're suffering. You're dealing with sacrificing your time, and resources, and pretty much just your way of living freely, your freedom, because you are not able to make sure you met those deadlines. And it could happen to anybody. It happens all the time. It's a very sad moment. Doing things ahead of time is going to save you time. It's going to save you energy, save you effort, save you stress. It's stress that you're facing now, trying to get everything done in a even shorter span of time than what you've been provided to actually complete your deadline. But you're doing it with more time, ahead of time, And then you're free to mingle. You're free to explore. You're free to use and fill up that time with anything else. Now, there's no opportunity. There's no certainty that you're going to have the opportunity. It's going to present itself anytime, every single time. Often it's the case where you're doing the right thing and there's nothing on the other end of it. There's not like a party waiting. There's no friend waiting to call you. There's no opportunity there. There's nothing to do. Everyone's inside. And it can suck sometimes. It can seem like there's no need to really go out on a limb and just do your whatever you need to do ahead of time to just free yourself of the burden. But it will benefit you. It'll benefit you. You can't determine what's going to be in the future. What's going to be in the next few hours, the next few days. That time that you've been provided by whomever has given it to you. It's allowed you to have it. And you're waiting up till the last minute that's good for you because you just say, hey, well, there's nothing better to look forward to afterwards, which is a strange thing, right? Because people typically don't, when they're handed down deadlines that they don't really like and they take a significant amount of time to finish them, they probably just don't like them. They probably don't like them. They don't want to be doing them any longer than they do, but they prolong the process. We all prolong the process rather than getting it out of the way. And I understand sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's not convenient to just do it right now. Sometimes you have to give it time. You get home on a Friday, you may not want to start that till Sunday. But doing it ahead of time, doing it on that Friday frees you up for the whole weekend. Right? We may have talked about that before. Frees you up for the whole weekend. This is what it's about. This is the way you're going to win. That's the only way you're going to win. And unfortunately, it's one of the hardest things you can do is do something ahead of time. That takes a lot of discipline. That takes probably, I'd say, it's on par with the amount of effort and stress almost, but it's a different kind of stress. The kind of stress that you commit when you have to do a deadline that you don't want to. You have to meet it and the pressure's caving in on you and you can't even just properly sleep right. Doing something ahead of time is going to require you a certain amount of energy, willpower, and stress too. It's going to require effort. There's no doubt about that. But the payout is much greater than to simply complete your deadline on time, like a couple hours before. Just being a few hours before is not as great as being 2 days ahead, right? Being 2 days, 2 full days ahead, 2 weeks, whatever the case is going to benefit you significantly. And I'm not telling you to do it the next day. I'm asking you to consider it, to consider the benefits of it, what you stand to gain should you actually master that skill. A lot of people do that. They go to really high levels when it comes to their goals. And if you want to get to a higher level and develop a mastery and not have anxiety and fear and just feeling pressure when it comes to completing your deadlines and being comfortable and getting into the habit of that, you ought to consider it. You ought to take it seriously. Start as small as possible if that works better for you. I get that deadlines are annoying. They're always going to be that way. But it's also possible to turn them into your own strength. I want to thank you guys on behalf of the Health and Wellness GSMC podcast on the GSMC podcast network. If you liked any of the content, make sure you subscribe. It shows support. And like us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. All right. Thanks. Have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.